Hi, I'm Ashley and this is Crafty with Ashley. So my channel is all about just inspiring you to get in and start creating something. For me, the things I tend to do are painting, crocheting, and baking. So my channel kind of focuses on those things, but I just want to inspire you to get in and get started and get creative. So today we're going to be talking about crocheting. Specifically, we're going to get a little maybe controversial and talk about what a beginner should actually not crochet. There are all sorts of kind of beginner patterns out there, and I guess my view on it is a lot of them, as a true beginner, you really probably shouldn't start with. So the first thing that I'm going to do is actually I'm going to pull up on my phone a Google search. So I am typing in the question, what should a beginner crochet? So I literally have pulled that up on Google here, and we're just gonna look at the first few hits on here. Okay, so our first one, 25 easy crochet patterns for beginners. And this is from the Spruce Crafts, which is a very big website, very notable, very high authority in the craft space. So it starts with just a little kind of snippet about just some options of what you can crochet and learning different skills. And then it goes through actually and gives you 25 patterns that you are supposed to be able to start with as a beginner. So let's look at it. First one, single crochet washcloth. And this is a free pattern. So, okay, little washcloth, that seems pretty doable, right? Let's keep going. Well, we have a couple more washcloths, and then we have this crochet cozy. Still doesn't look super hard. It's kind of small, maybe as a beginner. I've never crocheted before. I've never picked up a hook. I've never, tried to put the yarn on my hook, but maybe I think I can do that. It says once I get the hang of it, should only take 10 to 15 minutes. Well, that seems pretty reasonable, but what does that once I get the hang of it mean, right? So then we keep going. Ooh, now I don't know about this. That looks a little bit fancier. And it says in the description, ooh, the pattern uses single crochet and half double crochet, right? So I'm a beginner. I don't even know what a half double or a single crochet is. So I don't know if I can do that one. That one looks a little fancy. So then we keep going. Oh, there's some hearts. Those look a little complicated. And ooh, now we got a bag. I don't know about that, right? So as you can see, they're kind of, okay, they look pretty simple, but as a true beginner, I don't even know what these stitches are. I want to be encouraged that I can actually do this project and that it will turn out okay, right? So then let's keep going. I'm back on my just Google search, right? Ooh, now I got a how to crochet for beginners. Well, that's super helpful, but doesn't really answer the question of what I should crochet, right? Essential tools for beginners. I don't know about that. Now, okay. Free crochet patterns for beginners. Well, let's look at this. I'm already looking at just what it's showing in the Google search, and I am questioning, right, that this is actually for beginners. So let's look, and well, it says these are all beginner patterns, but this is what I see when I first pull it up. Now, if I'm a beginner, those look pretty complicated. There's lots of things going on in those, and I don't think I can probably do that as a beginner. So let's just kind of go over what things I don't think you should try to do as a beginner. So as a beginner, first things, I would not recommend crocheting in the round. And what this means, because again, you're a beginner, you might not know what that means, right? Crocheting in the round means that instead of crocheting back and forth in rows, so think that washcloth, think a blanket, right? You're crocheting back and forth and you're getting this long, tall project, right? So instead of doing that, you're actually starting in the middle of a project and you're crocheting in kind of circles. You would do this for something like a hat. I have an example here. So this is a little beanie that I did make for my daughter, and I started just right at the very top and I crocheted out and it got bigger and bigger, and then it I got to a point where I didn't want it to get bigger anymore and I went down. So this is crocheted in the round. If you can see behind me, there's also a basket back there that I have crocheted. That's also crocheted in the round, started at the bottom. So the reason I don't recommend starting with crocheting in the round as a beginner is it's a lot harder to keep track of where your stitches go, especially as you get to the end of the round and you're starting the next round. It gets kind of confusing and it's super easy to put your hook in the wrong spot or add a stitch or accidentally miss a place where you're supposed to put a stitch. And then your project's gonna look a little wonky. And I don't know about you, but as a beginner, I want my projects to look halfway decent. It's just kind of encouraging when you actually get a product at the end that looks good, right? It makes you want to keep going and keep doing the craft. So I would not recommend with starting with something in the round. So that even includes some of those like flat coasters or like an infinity scarf. It's not exactly the same. You're not starting with a circle like this, but you're kind of joining and then working around this big circle. So I wouldn't recommend starting with something like that. Another project that I would not recommend starting, I have another example, and this actually kind of combines two of them, but I would not recommend starting with something really big like an afghan. The reason for this is with afghans, first of all, they're big, they're gonna take a while, right? And as a beginner, I think you need a little bit more immediate gratification, something that gets done a little bit faster. You can see the results a lot faster. So I would not recommend starting with an afghan. So this is a throw blanket that I made and it's pretty decent size. And it takes a while. And if you are making something this big and you're not keeping kind of the tightness of your stitches all exactly the same, which let's face it, as a beginner, your tension, that tightness is not going to be the same every stitch because you don't have those, that motor memory of holding the hook, holding the yarn exactly the same way all the time, right? So your project might end up kind of growing or shrinking a little bit, and it's gonna be really noticeable if you're working on a big scale. Another thing that this blanket specifically has is I worked it in kind of these squares. So this kind of brings me to my next thing you shouldn't do as a beginner. I don't recommend starting with a project that you have to make two of the same size for exactly the same reason. Your tension is not going to be consistent as a beginner. So this would include something like squares, even granny squares, which a lot of people say to start with. Granny squares are kind of that traditional crochet that you think back, and I don't know, maybe kind of the hippies, right? Usually very colorful and they have kind of a motif. So it can be a flower, it can just be kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but granny square, I think a picture comes to mind when you hear granny square, but if not, Google it. And that kind of combines two of the things. You have to make multiple of the same size and it's worked in the round, so don't do that. But these ones also had to be the same size to make this project. And so each square I made individually and then I sewed them all together at the end. So I wouldn't recommend doing that. But things like baby booties, they can be pretty simple to make, but you have to get two that are exactly the same size or else it's kind of silly, right? Your kid hopefully has the same size feet. Mine did, or close to it. Everybody has a little asymmetry, but you're gonna keep trying. And actually I did this, my sister, when she was pregnant with her first kid, I decided I would make little sandals for her child and they did turn out super cute. The sandals were great. I did try to make like little, they were supposed to look like little Adidas tennis shoes. Well, I made two and they were about a ½ inch different in length. And then, so I made a third one to try to match one of the sizes and I actually ended up just scrapping the project. I frogged it, ripped out the yarn and they didn't look good. And I was an experienced crocheter, but that was just because maybe I wasn't paying attention. I don't know, maybe I counted wrong. But regardless, don't try to make something that you need two of the same size. Another thing that I wouldn't recommend starting with as a true beginner. I would not start with clothing. So this is a tiny dress that I made for my second daughter, for her in the hospital to take some newborn pictures. And it was super easy, I promise. So don't be scared off of clothes forever. It was super easy, but don't try to do this as a beginner because fit matters, right? And you're working kind of holes for the armhole, for the neck hole. And, you know, if you're trying to make something that's in a specific size, again, that tension, that tightness of your stitches, it has to be right, or else you're going to end up with too big or too small of a project. So don't start with it, but don't not do it forever, because look how cute this is for a little tiny girl. Oh my goodness, it was adorable. And she looked awesome in it, and she looked like my little princess that she is. And so don't be scared off forever, but don't start with it. Last thing, and I don't have an example of this to show you, the last thing that I would not start with as a beginner is making amigurumi. And I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce it. It's a Japanese word, and it just means crocheting stuffed toys. So stuffed animals. And that's actually what, well, I guess I closed it. That's actually what one of these showed. These little dinosaurs that were shown on this website for the beginner crochet, that is amigurumi. And you make little crocheted animals or whatever, cactus I've seen, just anything, but it's 3-dimensional, and then you stuff it. And this takes a lot of skill. Yes, it's simple stitches, but it takes a lot of skill to get the tension right, to get, I mean, you really need your stitches very tight in this, or else the stuffing will start to poke out. And if you're crocheting that tight, it's harder to see where to put your hook, and it's harder to put the hook in general. And this would be really hard as a beginner, because you're already just trying to figure out where you're supposed to put the hook, and now you can't really see it. So I don't recommend starting with this. Again, not something that you should be deterred from forever. Practice some of the basic stitches, get used to holding the hook, get used to holding the yarn, get used to maintaining your consistent tension, and then you can venture into all of these projects. I have not done amigurumi, but that's just, I guess, because I'm not personally interested in it, but I've done all of the other things. And don't be scared off forever. Just get some practice with the basic stitches before you do it. So what does that leave? What do I recommend starting with? So as a true beginner, I want you to get comfortable with the very basic skills of holding your hook and holding your yarn and manipulating them. Now, maybe this comes from my background as a physical therapist. I don't know. I think that it's all about building blocks. It's starting at, you know, step 1, and then you're gonna add on stuff. And you can add on these other skills super quickly, but I want you to get those basic foundational skills first. And to do that, I do recommend doing chain projects. And so I have a whole nother video about projects like this. This is a headband that I made, and this literally is just a chain stitch, which if you don't know anything about crochet, feel free, check out the rest of my videos and you'll figure it out. It's the most simple stitch. It's the very first one that you have to learn, and you can make little projects like this, complete projects, in about 15 minutes from the very first time you ever picked up the hook and the yarn. And so that is what I recommend starting with. You're going to get that instant gratification of making something that's usable, that's functional, that's hopefully looks nice and not so wonky and wavy like if you're doing a big project. And you're just, if you're like me, gonna feel a little bit better about, okay, I can do this craft, right? So with that, if you do want to see what I recommend and how to do it, check out this video here. It is all about my beginner crochet patterns. It gives you all the information that you need to make something like this, along with about 15 other options of different things that you can make as a true beginner, never picked up a hook before, never picked up the yarn before. Check out this video. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day.